let's talk about Laurie Lightfoot's Chicago, because Chicago is a war zone. It seems to literally be hell on earth. And you just read through these things, it's just numbers. It just becomes numbers after a while. Stalin's dictum, whereas, Lenin's, one death is a tragedy, a million's a statistic. Well, that's where we're getting into here. So not this weekend just gone, but the weekend before, there were 78 people shot in Chicago in 2 days. 2 days, 78 people shot. Like, this is genuine war zone levels of people being shot and killed. 4 mass shootings accounted for a third of these people who were shot in one city.
How many people died in Iraq at the same time?
Well, exactly. Like 10 dead from this. So only 10 died out of the 78 people killed. But this means that so far this year, so about halfway through the year now, 331 homicides compared to 319 at this point last year and 247 at this point in 2019. So the graph is going up. So the shootings just going up. So that's a 34% increase compared to 2019. Laurie Lightfoot, Chicago. I mean, that's awful, right? There have been, and this is at least 1,842 shootings this year, right? So thankfully, most shootings are actually not fatal, I guess, thank God, and compared to in 2019, 1,171. So we've got 700 more shootings, just raw numbers. And so that's 57% increase or something like that. So literally a war zone, right? And so over that weekend, people were shot in 17 of the city's 22 police districts. So most of the police districts have shootings, right? The most violent was the Grand Crossing district in the south side, where 6 were shot in one attack, 4 in another, and a 14-year-old boy was shot in a third attack. The most serious attack in the district was in the South Shore neighbourhood, where a gunman in a black SUV sprayed bullets at a group of people around 8:45 p.m. on Sunday, killing 1 woman and wounding 5 other people, according to the police. Can you imagine living like this? Who wants to live like this? Like, this is insane. Hours later, Nyoka Bowie, 37, was killed and at least 10 other people were shot in Marquette Park when gunmen stepped from an alley and just started open fire. Just, why not? Group of people, I better shoot them. No one was in custody in either shooting, and there have been at least 8 other mass shootings in Chicago this month. And I went through all of these things. There are loads of articles, or it's just local news reports. We're using the Chicago Sun-Times here. Local news reports. And they, of course, give you all the details. And you just go through it, it's just, oh my God. And so many of them, it's like, no suspects have been apprehended. No suspects have been arrested or anything like that. And it's like, right, so loads of them, just no one's getting arrested for this.
Is it even gangs or just...
Well, who knows? We don't know who's done it because no one's been arrested.
Huh.
But I assume that it is. Right. So the police superintendent, David Brown, blamed the cluster of mass shootings on a surplus of illegal guns on the streets. And a court system, he complained, was too slow to reopen and too lenient in sentencing. The answer is too many guns, too many illegal guns, in too many hands and too little consequences, he says. So it's not like they can even outlaw guns. I believe that Chicago has remarkably restrictive gun laws in local gun laws.
I mean, like in New York, you can't even get a handgun without a ridiculous amount of paperwork.
Yeah, and so, right, okay, so the gun laws didn't work, right?
Don't worry, we've banned owning guns. Like, you have to go through all this nonsense. Yes. But don't worry, the illegal guns, they're easy to get.
Yeah, just like banning drugs made people stop taking drugs. But Chicago is on pace to recover 12,000 illegal guns by the end of the year, which would be a record, surpassing last year's record of 11,000 illegal guns. We also have strong advocacy in courts for offenders and very little for victims, showing the general theme of leftist run areas, which is to say, oh, well, they're victims of society, not the people they've shot. They're not the real victims. The perpetrators are the real victims. Brown also notes that officers are being shot in higher numbers than last year as well. 31 officers have been shot or shot at this year, and by the end of 2020, 79 officers had been shot or shot at. So
thanks BLM.
Yeah, thanks BLM. But so if one were to turn, understandably, to Laurie Lightfoot and go, okay, this is your city. Why? Well, that's a racist or sexist criticism.
Wait.
According to Laurie Lightfoot.
99% of critics motivated by racism, sexism.
That's right.
Sorry, if you point out that there's a huge crime wave in her city,
Yep.
I imagine it's really, really hard for an average citizen there to get a gun legally.
Yep.
She's defended by armed guards.
Yep.
Criticize her, you're racist.
Yep. Because her city is falling apart into an absolute, just a hellhole, and
What's
she's
the
like,
voting
you're
like
racist.
here as well? Like, I wonder, is she sat on 70+ Democrat
Yes.
or what? Yeah.
Chicago's been Democrat for
This is
literally
the thing that kills me,
decades.
because there is going to be no recompense for these people, and they totally deserve it.
If the people of Chicago are going to continue voting Democrat, and this is where it's led them, then what can you do? You can't you lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But anyway, yeah, she's, of course, this is all about her gender and race. Look at my predecessor, she says. Women and people of color are always held to a different standard. I understand that. I've known that my whole life.
Yeah, white male mayors never get complaints about murders.
Well,
murders go on all the time, and no one cares.
No, that's probably true. I mean, if you go to some Republican held area, they'll be like, so what are the major problems that people come to with? Oh, things about taxes and permits and things like that. And it's like, so not mass gang murders in the streets every day. No, we don't have that here. It's because I'm a woman and a woman of color that you're criticizing. No, it's because people are killing each other in the streets in unprecedented numbers on a daily basis. I mean, genuine, just harrowing how bad this is. And Laurie's just like, nope.
Hasn't Chicago been like the butt of a joke for a long time on this issue?
Yes. She says, I mean, listen, right?
Or is that Detroit that's always
No, Detroit and Chicago, both same problem, basically. I believe that violence is a manifestation of systemic problems.
She ever met a murderer?
Clearly not. She's got armed guards. But this is the point. She's like, if you're going to say, right, the people who are doing all of the murdering are actually not the perpetrators. They themselves are the victims, and they're the victims of systemic problems. This becomes a public health crisis. Then now you can't even bring the perpetrators to justice.
Why are you randomly shooting at a group of 8 people? Because of the history of slavery.
Society. That's why.
But like systemic problem, she's saying that, which is going to be systemic racism in Democrat speak. So it's like, the history of American racism has made me do this.
Yeah.
Like, my great-great-grandfather was a slave, therefore die. And he's shooting black people as well.
Yeah, exactly. But why are you shooting that black person over there then? It's not even congruent.
Oh, that's internalized racism.
It's a massive cope to get around the fact that she's not doing her job. And let's be fair, you're probably going to need to use some fairly heavy-handed tactics to bring these areas into something that could be considered civilized. Like, you can't allow these people to operate like this. Like, look at all the murders. I can't stand it.
Feel the mayor.
Well, yeah, I suppose if you're the mayor and you've got armed guards and you can deflect any criticism of your terrible policies as racism, then I suppose you can. But you see, in way too many neighborhoods, there's a lack of jobs, a lack of investment. These are historic, decade-long problems. Yes. I'm not investing in a community where there are literally mass shootings every weekend. Why would you? Who would?
The chat's calling it Chirac.
Well, that's the colloquialism that the Americans use for it. Chirac, yes. Because, I mean, it's worse, to be honest. Because, I mean, at least with Iraq, like, it's the Americans and the jihadis, right? You've got two identifiable groups that are fighting, but in this, what the hell's happening? Anyway, joined by the Chicago Department of Public Health, Laurie said that there's a 9.2-year life expectancy gap between black and non-black Chicagoans. Yes.
I wonder why.
Because shootings. Don't know how to tell it.
Their hospitals are racist.
Lightfoot said the city would be willing to implementing a Will to Act initiative that will focus on addressing the impacts of historical policies like Jim Crow restrictions, redlining, and other forms of financial and housing segregation and discrimination. That's not going to fix the shootings. And of course, as we talked about the other day, the city's public health department will allocate $10 million in coronavirus relief funds to establish 6 healthy Chicago equity zones. As if that's going to... That's not going to
even mean?
No, I don't know. It's not going to do anything. But anyway, so
that's just corruption. That's someone pocketing 10 mil.
Yeah,
this is like the gender programs for Pakistan.
Yes, it is very much the gender programs for Pakistan. We have money left over from the coronavirus stuff. We may as well funnel it into our pet projects that will do nothing good. But anyway, so that was the weekend before last. And then this weekend, 15 people shot. So good weekend for Chicago. Only 15 people shot. I mean, in all of the southwest of England, no one was shot.
Is anyone stabbed?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't seen any news reports.
Well, go to London for that. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. 15 more shot, 6 dead. Just reading through this is tragic. This is actually a really good article by the Daily Mail where if you scroll down, John, you can see they're just giving further, please. They're just giving like each thing. This 10 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever. Just going through a timeline of the shootings, and it's just like all across the city, just bang, bang, just random. It's awful. So it's just tragic. Reading through this is just tragic, and it's awful that Laurie Lightfoot is just like, yeah. So the fact that you bring this up makes you a racist. Okay, fine. So moving,
I'm reading though. It's just like someone driving down the street.
Yeah,
and just 17-year-old boy get shot.
Yeah, it's awful. At 17-year-old boy killed at 5:30 p.m. Then at 5:50 p.m., 41-year-old man was shot in the leg while driving because someone shot his car from the sidewalk. Why? Lunacy.
Like, this is what I mean. Like, I'm not entitled to believe all of these victims are some kind of gang-related violence.
Well,
I mean, I don't know, but
it's just a bizarre licentiousness when it comes to violence. This complete callousness and disregard for human life that seems to have taken hold in her city. I'll just shoot a random car driving past. Why? The hell's wrong with you? You know, you've got to be a lunatic. But anyway, so moving back over to the UK, the UK does not want to defund the police. 17% of public were in favour of it, according to one poll. And, of course, 59% opposed, 17%, 15% having no opinion. 18 to 24-year-olds were divided with 36 supporting and 35 opposing, which shows that young people are propagandized idiots and have been taken for a ride by the left. But this is not young people in specific communities, because if you go to specific communities, such as in Birmingham, where there has been a spate of knife deaths recently, of course, knives replacing guns in the British context, you've got one Desmond Jadu, a Birmingham community activist, who says, we need to... Because the same sort of thing is happening in Birmingham. It's just... and again, it's just young black men stabbing each other in inner cities. This is just insane violence, and no one seems to be able to do anything about it. Right, this happened because of the killing of a 14-year-old boy just on the main road, middle of the day, Monday. Why not? Right? Terrible stuff. He says, we need to claim these streets back as a matter of urgency. Are we going to end up living in a state of anarchy and terror? I don't think I'm being overdramatic in saying that. Our youngsters have their lives ahead of them, and our elders should not be burying their children. Yeah, well, he's not wrong. He's not over-egging this at all. He's not being overdramatic. If you think that living in a state of anarchy is something that's unlikely, look at Chicago, where you've just got people randomly shooting at cars, randomly shooting into crowds. Like, that really is something that is happening. And this is something that seems to be being exported to British black communities. And no kidding that the activists are like, look, we do not want this. This is anarchy and terror, because this is exactly what it is.
I'd love to see the breakdown again, because remember in the race report, what was it? West Africans versus Black Caribbeans?
Yeah.
You know, same genetic type, and yet the performance in society was vastly different. West Africans overperforming, and then Caribbeans massively underperforming in education and wealth. I'd like to see the crime statistics breakdown of that as well, because I think the police just list black.
Yeah, I doubt that they actually have that fine granulation in their data.
But if you go into it, I wonder what the results will be.
I do too. But anyway, he says, young people have been out of school, so they've been more susceptible to issues around exploitation, joining gangs, issues with boredom and nothing to do, and not wanting to stay in their households. So then you end up with mass groups of young people on the streets, says Craig Pinkney, who's an activist in this. But then it gets okay, well, what can we do? What's the problem? In any time there are issues around austerity, lack of education, poor housing, high levels of trauma, you're going to find high levels of violence. All we focus on is the punishment. Thinking giving harsh sentences is going to solve the problem. What the kids have been saying in the research is that they're scared. If we don't address the fear, we only address the consequences of their actions. Okay, so what does that require? What does it require for young people to not live in fear of their peers when walking down the street?
You get rid of the knives.
But that's not possible.
It's not. So then what?
Armed guards. You need literally French-style military occupation. That's the only solution that we're going to be able to provide. Because the problems are internal. They're not something that we can talk about. They're not. We can't critique the ethical standards of these communities. And so, okay, well, we have to look at it from our outsider perspective. Right, okay, we're going to need armed guards on the streets, just in case some lunatic whips out a knife and starts stabbing people in the middle of the day. What other choices are there?
But that would be refunding the police, wouldn't it?
That would be refunding the police, which is, incidentally...
But it's interesting because you make the point, which is exactly true, which is that if you look just where the rich are and how they deal with this, the government, what do they do whenever there's a terrorist attack? They bring out armed guards, they bring out the military, or just armed police officers to walk up and down around Whitehall and whatnot. They know that that's the response.
It's the only response. If the person who was going to go on an attack, not a terror attack, just an attack, whether it's a gang-related thing or whatever, sees that there are armed guards around who are going to shoot them when they pull out a knife or pull out a gun or whatever, then they're probably less inclined to do it.
But then the same with Chicago. I mean, why not just send a National Guard unit and
you
just
do
sit
need
around
to
until they stop killing?
What
tens
other
of
options
people?
are there? They're all illegal guns. It's not, we banned guns. Oh, well, let's not stop the shootings. Ban knives. Well, that's not going to stop the stabbings. You know, like it's
Also ban knives.
yeah, it's stupid. But like, it's
Well, our government's trying to do it. So.
well, yeah, they are. But it's the fact that there is an impulse within these communities to be violent in this way that needs to be addressed. And it seems that the only options that we really have are just to make sure that if someone tries something, they get shot. Which is a step up, I suppose, from just allowing them to go stabbing and shooting. But
You got to make murder expensive.
yeah, you've got to make it not worth their time. But what's really interesting is in 2019, The Guardian reported that the situation in Britain, specifically in London, but I imagine it's getting that way in Birmingham too, is getting so bad that Somalian parents who have moved to this country are sending their children back to Somalia where they will be safer.
Wait, are they from Somaliland or southern Somalia?
Both. Somalia, Somaliland,
Okay.
and Kenya.
Somaliland, yep, sure. Probably is better.
Well, apparently
so-
even
then-
Somalia is better.
Well, even the southern part,
Yeah?
with Boko Haram. Or Al-Shabaab, or whichever one it is.
How many people did they kill this weekend?
Tons. I mean, there's bombs that go off every other week, but...
Sure, but
guess-
the casualty rating is just not that high. But anyway, so, for example, Rakia Ismail, Islington's deputy mayor, says sending them away has become the only way they can be safer. The issue of safety has repeatedly been raised by the community, but nobody has listened. So many children have gone abroad. 2 weeks ago, there was a stabbing and a child was taken back home 2 days later. Okay, but why was there a stabbing? Like, whose community is this coming out of? You said they're going, no one's doing anything. They're your kids. What are we supposed to do? You know, we're not raising them. You guys are raising them. How is this supposed to be someone else's fault? But anyway, 17 people had died in attacks in London alone since the start of 2019. This was written in 2019, March of 2019. So in 3 months, there had been 17 children who had died.
This is only getting worse.
And it's only gotten worse, obviously. Sadiq Khan's London, because, of course, any criticism of Sadiq Khan is also racism. So he's got the Laurie Lightfoot defence. And Birmingham is, of course, having the same problem. I mean, this again, back in 2019, there were 3 knife fatalities within days in February. And this level of violence apparently is facing parts of British society that are evident in testimony of Islington's sizable Somali community. Representatives say that 50 to 70% have been directly affected by county lines and knife crime. Okay? So why? Why are your young people in these communities killing each other?
Again, I'd love to see the breakdown, if you could break it down among ethnic groups rather than just race.
Yeah, it's bound to be something like that.
I'd love to see Nigerians versus Somalians. Which ones are the people who are stabbing on the streets?
Yeah, but the point is, as Sadia Ali, the treasurer of Islington Somalia Forum and founder of Minority Matters, said, hundreds of youngsters have been taken to Somalia, Somaliland and Kenya, some all the way to the rural areas. Parents feel they have no choice if they want their son to be safe. Not safe in British cities.
Well, London.
Well, yeah, they're British
London and
cities.
Bristol.
No, London and Birmingham.
I'll go with Bristol, and then why not?
Yeah, but Bristol's probably on its way to becoming like this because they're leftists and they seem to have a problem with law, order, and discipline. And, I mean, what are the options? I just don't see what the options are at this point. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.